Well, good. Glad you could join us. So the way this will work is in a few minutes, we'll kick off a program, which basically I've found some interesting content that I've pulled out some highlights from, and I'll talk about what we some things that product managers at high growth companies are doing that product managers at stagnant and declining companies aren't doing, and kind of some of the differences there, and a couple of interesting finds. Then we'll break off into smaller groups to talk about, and I'll set up kind of a question. You'll talk amongst yourselves. I'll give you a question, and I said I wouldn't channel into Richmond, but I just can't help it. But then we'll break off and kind of have a little bit more of a group discussion to bring our own experiences to the table and combine those into a document with kind of some things to study or explore further, and share that with everybody here, and kind of come back at the end. So it gives us a little bit of a chance to work with a few of the people here in the meeting and get to know them a little bit better. And so you don't just have somebody talking at you the whole time that we're talking, but on a Zoom call, it's also hard to get 50 or 100 people talking.
I may have to jump off too, because right now my job is calling. So I don't know.
All right. Well, if you have to jump, we hope you'll come back later today or another time. Hey, Brett, why don't you introduce yourself? Good morning, sir. Oh, you're going to switch off. All right, I'll come back to you. Jump in if you want.
No, I meant me.
Oh, gotcha.
Video. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Too early technical difficulty. So the camera didn't come back either. Kepler Consulting. I run my own email consulting. I worked acoustic for years with Diane and Jason Brett. Crossing acoustic, Salesforce Marketing Cloud, anything that anybody needs, really.
Cool. Welcome, Brett. Nice. Is it Ada or Ida?
It's Ida. Ignore the first A.
That's okay.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Yeah, I work, I'm a technology manager. I work for State Farm Insurance, and I'm actually on the UX side of things, making a career transition into product. So, yeah.
Well, welcome. Welcome. Yeah, and I see my old friend Janine Whiteman here. You're on mute, Janine.
Good morning.
Good morning. Introduce yourself to everyone here.
Janine Whiteman, product manager, currently product owner, contract with the team at Verizon.
Excellent. Well, welcome. Glad to have you this morning. So for those of you who have joined a little bit later, what I'm basically doing is, if you're on camera, I'll ask you to introduce yourself to everyone here. And if you're not, I'll leave you alone. So we're going to give it about 4 more minutes before we get started here. I will go ahead and start sharing, though. I've got a couple of resources for you today. And so I'm going to share my screen. There we go. So I set up a page over on the Product Coffee website, productcoffee.com/resources, which has links to all of the resources that we're going to be using today. And there are a few things here. We're going to be talking about this ebook that Gartner put out, or not just the ebook, but kind of the concept in the ebook itself. But I wanted to call everyone's attention to a few things as well. I set up a couple of weeks ago a LinkedIn group for the Product Coffee set, and it's different from the Product Camp stuff that you've got. And the reason for that is I wanted us to have a place where we could continue any conversations that we started here. I started several weeks ago. I set up a spreadsheet for everyone who joined the Product Coffee event to share their contact information and LinkedIn information. And it occurred to me it'd just be easier to set up a LinkedIn group. So if you want to reconnect with folks who are coming to these meetings, you can join the LinkedIn group by following the link on the resources page. And that'll make it easier to find the folks that you've met here. And we can also have kind of follow-on discussions and kind of keep it a little bit more threaded and together if you wanted to follow up on something that you heard here today or ask a question about something that you heard or saw here today. The ideas, one of the things that I'm really focused on is in the spirit of Product Camp. How many people have been to Product Camp before? I know quite a few of you have. So if you haven't been to a product camp, the way we do product camp is at the beginning of the day, everybody shows up and you'll have about 50 people will pitch a session. They'll say, here's something I want to talk about today, or I want to share today. And everyone who shows up votes, and we take the top voted ideas, and that's what we talk about for the day of product camp. And try to do the same thing for Product Coffee, just virtually and every week instead of one big all-day conference a year. So I've set up a board where you can make suggestions for sessions and topics that you'd like us to talk about here or that you'd like to lead here. And you can do either. You can just make a suggestion for for us to go find somebody to talk about, or you can say, hey, I'd like to lead a discussion on this topic. And that's a really great way to put yourself out in front of your peers and get you build your network, build your leadership position in the community, and get noticed by a lot of people. We're also recording these sessions and taking the best bits of them and turning them into short video podcasts that can be rewatched by people who weren't able to attend. You can subscribe to that over on YouTube. And I've also started a list of upcoming events that that are of interest to product managers. And what I'm doing with that is each week when I send out the newsletter, I will send out the events for the next 4 weeks that I think that I believe will be of interest to people who are interested in product management. That'll just kind of be part of the weekly email that you get if you're subscribed to the Product Coffee newsletter. And for example, right now we've got coming up pretty soon, we've got the Product Camp Pittsburgh on this Saturday at 8:45 a.m. And you can sign up for that. Just Google Product Camp Pittsburgh. I've got a link for it as well, but just Google Product Camp Pittsburgh. It's free. It's an all-day virtual product camp if you want to watch some sessions. And then Product Camp Austin, which is one of the biggest product camps, is going to be on October 17th, and they've just opened registration as well. And there are a few others coming up, but they haven't opened registration yet, so I'll announce those when it's a little bit closer to time. And finally, the notes. I'd really encourage everyone to open up the notes document. And this is a Google Doc that I've set up, and everyone should have access to edit it. And what I really want to do here is it's impossible for me to lead the meeting and take notes at the same time. So as you hear interesting things in the discussion that you think are worth capturing, please take notes in this document that we can all share and build on each other's notes. And I'll also ask a question after we kind of get through the introduction to the topic and break off into small groups. I'm going to ask each of the small groups to collaborate a little bit more on the topic and come up with a couple of suggestions to drop in the notes document that I've shared here as well. And we'll make that kind of part of the outcome of this meeting with hopefully some actual next steps that we can think about when we leave here to improve our position as we go back to work today, or as we're thinking about how we can differentiate ourselves as we're breaking into the product management space. So that's productcoffee.com/resources. And you should be able to see my slide again. Everybody see that? Just some nods will be good. Okay, good. All right, excellent. Cool, well, it's 8:02, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Where I'd really like to start off is I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to take a little survey here in just a moment, just to kind of see what people's thoughts are on this topic today. But as we look at different types of companies. There are companies that are growing in revenue, and that's kind of the thing that most companies are really focused on is we want to grow our revenue, right? That's why we're here. We're going to generate revenue. And there are some companies that are doing that successfully, and there are some companies that aren't. They're either very stagnant, maybe they've been around for a little while, or maybe they're even declining and they're kind of starting to fall off. And one of the things that that we'll talk about today is some of the characteristics of the companies that are growing versus the ones who are declining or at least stagnating. But before we do that, I wanted to ask a question. I'm going to launch a poll here, and I'm going to ask the question, when you're thinking about your product investments and how you want to invest in initiatives, what do you think, and I'm going to give you a list, what do you think are the 3 most important inputs to consider as you're prioritizing your investments? So I'm going to launch that poll, and you can answer, you can check off 3 answers. So it's a multiple choice question. You should have that on your screen now. And if you don't have it on your screen, somebody let me know and I'll see if I can troubleshoot. If I don't hear anything, I'll assume everybody's got it. There we go, some votes starting to come in. Now I'm just going to let this go for a moment. So some of the concepts are: do you look at your financial goals and targets as a key prioritization factor, or do you focus more on what the market's saying? Do you look at the broad market or the narrow market? How do you look at the market? There is a trend towards looking inside the company and identifying stakeholders and SMEs from inside the company. Are they an important factor to you when it comes to prioritization? Looks like we've got most of the audience is starting to vote here. I'm interested. I see we have a couple of people that are just joining. If you just joined in the last few seconds, you can unmute yourself for a second and let me know. Did you see the poll when you came into the room, or did it not pop up for you?
Yes, I just logged in. As soon as I came in, I saw the thing. First thing is the poll.
Excellent. Okay, great. I wasn't sure if it would actually launch automatically for people who are just joining after it had been launched. Thank you. Welcome. Still got some votes, some folks clicking around here. I'm going to give it just a couple more minutes. I know we've got a couple people that look like they just joined on phone and aren't actually in the video conference, so I'm going to assume that they're not seeing the poll. So it looks like it's slowing down. I'm going to give it about 5 more seconds, and then I'm going to end the poll. All right. Oh, wait, a couple more people voted. I'll give them a few more seconds. All right. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. And there we go. So we had 24 people on board and 24 people gave some answers. I'm going to share the results out just so that everybody can see how we answered. And it looks like the number 1 vote getter was strategic goals. People look at people kind of generally agreed that focusing on strategic goals as a key input was a top priority. What did we have for number 2? It looks like direct customer feedback was number 2, followed by key financial targets. It looks like key financial targets. And then then we had a real drop off and drop down to market research, and then down to competitive intelligence and feedback from stakeholders outside of product management. And then we dropped way down to partner and channel requirements, direction from senior executives, and internal perspectives on customer needs. So that's actually really interesting. I think as we look at this as a group, I think you're going to be pretty encouraged by the view that we had as a group, and I'll reshare this in a little bit as well. But I'm going to close it for right now, because what I want to do next is I want to switch over and talk about a study that Gartner did. Gartner recently did a survey. It was actually late last year that they did the survey, but they interviewed and surveyed 200 product management leaders from various companies, and the survey was pretty interesting. I don't currently have a Gartner subscription, so I don't have all the content, but they've got quite a few assets that they created from it that give some insights as to what they learned. And one of them is this ebook. And if you'd like a copy of this ebook, it's free. It's on the resources page that I shared out for those who just joined. You can go to productcoffee.com/resources, and there will be a link to download this book as well, this ebook as well. And they identified some of the best practices, some of the characteristics of companies that are actually growing in revenue versus those who are declining or stagnating in revenue. And I wanted to specifically look at the investment priorities. They covered a few different topics in the ebook, but one of the there were two particularly interesting topics that I really wanted to focus on. And the first was around investments themselves. How do we choose which investments to make? When it comes down to it, there's not a product manager. I'm going to assert this, and somebody can feel free to jump in and call me a liar. I'm going to assert that there's not a product manager in this call who is dealing with a situation where they have more resources to get things done than they have ideas and things that they want to do. Is there anyone that has an overabundance of resources? I don't hear anybody jumping in yet. So we have to prioritize, and we've got some good ideas and we got some not as good ideas, but we need to figure out how to prioritize those investments. So what Gartner did is they pulled their survey results around the question about how do you prioritize your investment decisions? And they used and I used the same question that they did, or roughly the same question that they did. And they broke the respondents down by growth companies and non-growth companies, or organizations, I guess. There were clearly more growth organizations responding, which I kind of think is not surprising, since I think forward-thinking, growing organizations are more likely to be engaging with analysts on an ongoing basis and participating in a survey like this. But one of the things that they agreed on, both growth and non-growth companies, both of them have placed a heavy prioritization on strategic goals, which we all did as well. So that was a pretty common theme. What was more interesting is where they really differed. And the orange bars here represent answers that came in with a high degree of confidence. And I'm not going to get into all into statistical significance and confidence intervals on this call right now, because frankly, it hurts my brain when you really start digging in it. It's a complex topic. That being said, there were a couple of answers, both from growth companies and from non-growth companies, that were so consistently, it had such consistent responses. We got a high level of confidence that these are key characteristics that differentiate the two. And so let's take a look first at the non-growth companies. And the characteristic that they observed was that within these non-growth companies, they tended to see a lot of product managers prioritizing financial goals and direction from senior executives as some of the top inputs to how we're going to invest. In the 60-second business case, I've spoken in the past about how you build that case quickly to combat the highest paid person in the room, that big loud voice that says, I'm in charge, this is the way we should go, and how you bring a very fast but data-driven approach to combating that discussion. That seems to be a real issue with companies that are stagnating when you have executives and leaders who are overpowering and the company is quite internally focused. When you say it that way, it's not all that surprising that you see these characteristics. But conversely, as we look at the growth companies, they're really focused outwardly. They're focused on that direct customer feedback. And as they dug a little bit deeper, we found that growth companies tend to have really intentional, strong voice of the customer programs, as they do really robust, intentional market research. Now, both growth and non-growth companies do some of this, but these were really confident characteristics of the growth companies. I thought that was pretty interesting. But I wanted to kind of validate that, because one of the things that the ebook doesn't do is it doesn't give examples of companies that are living this. And so I went and I looked at, one of my favorite lists, if you want to talk about growth companies, is the Inc. 5000. And if you look at the Inc. 5000, there's the company that was number one in the last edition of the Inc. 5000 is an Atlanta company called OneTrust. And OneTrust grew something like 43,000%, I think it was, over the last 3 years. Massive growth. And is currently got a valuation based on some recent investments of about $2.7 billion. And the CEO of OneTrust is passionately customer focused. And if you look at his activities and the way they've built that company, he was at AirWatch years ago. And while he was working on the product portfolio at AirWatch, he really started to observe from the market some trends that he felt like were opportunities, and began to validate those ideas with existing AirWatch customers. He even got permission to go build some capabilities around employee privacy, as AirWatch was focused on mitigating risk for devices. He also built some products really designed to protect employee privacy in this. And as he left AirWatch and had been to a few conferences, realized that there was a bigger opportunity out there in the market for around privacy management. This was a coming trend that wasn't going to change. And so he went whole hog and started a company specifically designed to manage, to help enterprises manage consumer and customer privacy more effectively. And he says over the last 3 years, he's put about 1 million miles, probably mostly on Delta there for auto. But he's put over 1 million miles in the air, visiting customers, getting feedback, talking about the problems that they have, and bringing potential solutions and kind of validating and growing the company. So those are some characteristics that very specifically in the Inc. 5000 write-up, he focused very heavily on explaining, here's why we're successful. So there's the number one fastest growing company in the world, privately held company in the world for the last 3 years, or over the last 3 years, is OneTrust from Atlanta, demonstrating these very specific characteristics. And you can go out to the Inc. website, and some of the articles are available for free. You can actually pull the write-up on OneTrust and read that for yourself. It was a really great read and encouraging from a product management perspective and thinking about the way to prioritize investments. So this isn't just a talking head sitting here talking to you. Are there thoughts about some of these other characteristics? There are clearly some other important characteristics. Feedback from stakeholders is important, but are there investment prioritization sources that you don't see here on this survey that you feel like are important, or at least worth discussion, or might fit in another way? Give it a few more seconds, give somebody a chance to come off mute, and then we'll move on. Because if we keep this stuff, I can just edit out the pauses. All right. So I want to switch gears a little bit then and move away from the investment prioritization decisions and talk about what that looks like in action. And so we've decided on some investment priorities, and we think we know where we want to invest, but then there are some steps that we're going to take before we actually go into development. And similarly, they did there was a question and some research in this survey around the pre-development activities before we actually commit the dollars to development. We've prioritized our investments, but now it's time to actually say go. And there were a few key differences once again between, and the differences are actually pretty significant in how growth organizations evaluate and plan and look at the potential work versus those stagnant or declining organizations. And one of the things that jumps off the page to you immediately here is we still went back to using the orange bars for the high confidence answers. And so one of the things that is immediately apparent as you look at this is that the growth organizations had quite a few answers with high confidence. So there was pretty strong agreement among product leaders from growth organizations on some of these key factors and priorities and kind of where they fall in the priority landscape. So I want to start kind of at the top here. And one of the things that's important to notice is that both growth and declining organizations do share some characteristics. And they've all kind of viewed some standard activities as pretty important. They do engineering sizing, they plan their projects, they look at resource availability and resource planning. They all do competitive analysis. They had kind of a pretty strong response that competitive analysis was a pre-development activity. And they all do some sort of validation with internal stakeholders at least. But the growth product managers do all that and then some more. And one of the first things that you'll notice is with a very high degree of agreement, they really focus on market sizing. And one of the quotes from that OneTrust article I was talking to you about just a moment ago is that, hey, we saw a massive market that had nothing but opportunity for growth for years to come. Consumer privacy was just starting to become a legislated issue in Europe, and it's going to spread to a global landscape very quickly. And it's going to be a requirement that is placed on enterprises that forces massive re-engineering of their products very quickly, and they're going to have to respond. So they saw a huge market opportunity, and one of the keys here, as we're thinking about our investments and our development planning, is we have to make sure before we invest in anything that there's actually somebody out there to buy our product. We can be really passionate about consumer privacy, but if there's nobody there to buy the product, then we can build all day long, and we're just going to be having fun building some software that we're passionate about. In the OneTrust case, though, we were really looking at there is a market of enterprises that have a ton of consumer data and individual data, and they are about to be forced very rapidly to take new actions and to mask that data and protect that data in ways that their systems aren't fundamentally designed to do. There is a market there that has no choice but to do some business with someone who is going to be solving this problem. Another big point of difference is that validation concept. And the winners, the growing companies, don't just validate the solutions, don't just validate the products and the technologies that they're building. They also validate that the problem is actually a problem worth solving. I noticed the other day there was an article that the leadership of Quibi, one of the new streaming networks, is saying, oh, we're evaluating some strategic alternatives. Basically, they're not making their numbers. They're not attracting the subscribers they expected to attract, and so they're rethinking their business. And what it comes down to, one of the analyses that I read, is they didn't actually set out and solve a problem that anybody cared about. Yeah, they created another streaming network that had some content, sure, but there's a billion streaming networks out there. There's lots of content out there available. So they weren't doing something that was unique and special. And they're kind of one of the first ones to really start suffering from this rush to create our own private streaming service with our own content. Is, you know, consumers are looking and say, hey, I got content, give me something I don't have, solve a problem that I've got. And they weren't. So you know, the notion of validating problems is one that I kind of latched onto as one of the big differentiators here between the companies. Validating solutions is intuitively obvious. Validating the problem is taking a step back and making sure it's part of that market sizing. Is there actually an audience and a customer base for me? But also, am I solving is the problem that I intend to solve really a valuable problem to that market?
Hey, Jason.
Yeah.
This is Ida. So I'm in UX, and we see this a lot. So we will have product managers who want to usability test prototypes. So they're doing the solution validation, and the prototype, the solution is usable, right? Mm-hmm. It's intuitive. And then you get to the golden question at the end: would you use this product, service, whatever? And they're like, no.
Right.
And I mean, you know, we're way down into the development cycle, and it just, you know, two things happen. Either things come to a screeching halt, and it's back to the drawing board, or we just shove that solution through. Mm-hmm. We're like, you know, it passed muster, it's usable, people can get through the flow, whatever, the funnel. Mm-hmm. And it just, you know, I just see that time and time again as a UX professional. So, and just for those of you who work with UX professionals, we're not just about making it look good.
You're not just about.
But we ask all those pesky questions up front, like, who's going to use this? What problem are we solving? And, you know, yeah, so that's not a shocker to me at all.
Yep, it's true. And I similarly have seen plenty of situations where we'll go down the path of developing a product, even developing a product or a feature or a capability that customers absolutely love. They say, oh, this is really fantastic. I love it. Well, would you pay for it? Oh,
no.
I have to pay for it? No. It's cool if it's free, but I'm not going to pay for it. And that's similarly, there's a problem, but maybe the problem isn't really a major problem. It's certainly not a problem that customers are willing to pay to solve. That's another side of the same coin. And a solution can be really cool and nice, but is it going to make us money? Is where it really comes into the final analysis. Any other examples that anybody wants to share?
Hey, Jason. This is Thiago.
Hey, Thiago.
Hey, I think this is all related to that dilemma, outputs versus outcomes, right? Sometimes we go into these agile organizations and we have like a high demand for quick output, and there is no time invested into the problem. It's just validating solutions. As Ida was saying, you ask the UX team to build a prototype to do usability testing, when actually you should be, when you go down that path, you already have a solution, you already spent a lot of time on designing things that maybe is not solving the right problem. Mm-hmm. So I think that looking at this research, at this survey, yeah, I'm also not surprised that the time spent on validating the problem and the solution, right, as a consequence of seeing this is the right problem to solve, will really move the needle, because you remove the noise from creating a lot of outputs, and you really focus on what are the core actions, what is the core activity, right, that is going to deliver value for the user at the end of the day.
That was really important. Would you say that again?
I need more coffee. But
So let me see if I can paraphrase, or see if I can play it back to you. By really focusing on validating the problem, even before you get to prototyping, you reduce a lot of distracting noise that gets in the way of productive work.
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, that's
And this is actually something that goes a little bit against of the productivity part of agile development, right? Because you are spending more time understanding the problem, spending more time on research, spending more time on building that rapport, that empathy with the user, while the development organization really wants to spit out code, right? Spit out features. And it can look counterproductive from a development standpoint, but when it goes to the product itself, that's where you can really make a difference and really deliver something meaningful.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
And one quick question. So this was interesting, Ida and Thiago. But how much time, like, have you seen, like when you're validating solution with customers or problem validation with customers, like what's your feedback on how useful a light, mock-up design is, right? Like in my experience, I've found sort of talking in abstract about something is different than, hey, this is what it would look like. And then you can, have the very pointed conversation with customer or user. Would you pay for this? Would you pay $10, $1,000 or zero?
Yeah, I can take a crack at that. So one practice that we try to do at State Farm is concept test. And yeah, a low fidelity mock-up, even a sketch of an idea, several ideas, right? So let me give you an example. A couple of years ago, on the insurance side of things, for our mobile app, we wanted, the problem we were trying to solve is that we wanted to get more customers to file claims through the mobile app. And so that was a business problem, not a user problem. And so we had a bunch of different ideas, and one of them was, so we had a bunch of different ideas, let's just put it that way. And we just did low fidelity sketches for each wireframe, whatever you want to call it, for each of the different ideas. And we ran the $100 test. So we gave,
Oh, you froze. Hopefully you'll catch up.
we gave tests up, could send it however they wanted on the day. You always have to be careful with yeah, well, anyway, so yeah, I mean, there's a lot more to it, but yes, I absolutely am a fan of testing out different ideas and beyond the abstract, correct. But don't fall too much in love with those early sketches. They're just to communicate an idea.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Ida, you cut out during your discussion of the $100 test, and I would like you, if you don't mind, just kind of repeat that bit for me, since you kind of cut out a little bit so everybody can hear it.
Sure. I think my kids are starting their classes, which is why we're all gobbling up my bandwidth at my house. So the $100 test is where you have a bunch of different ideas, and maybe you've mocked them up, low fidelity wires, whatever, or maybe it's just a written concept, and you give your test subjects 100 virtual dollars, and they can spend all of the whole $100 on one idea, or they can spread it out across a couple of ideas. And it's just one technique. It's not bulletproof, because what users say versus what they do can sometimes be two different things. But it's just one technique for testing out early concepts.
Yeah, one thing we usually do at ADP, we like a lot to use a day in the life example. So when we are trying to validate an idea, we just remove that idea from our speech, and we say, okay, tell us the problem you're solving, and tell us what is your day in the life? What do you do? What are the problems you struggle most with, and how often you struggle with these problems? And based on that, then you can start like getting more information about what Ida said is the difference between what the user wants or what they say they need versus what they actually need, right? So this is part of the art is how to translate like their desires and build this relationship with how they actually get the job done. And when you compare the two, then you can really extract, okay, this is how we're going to build this concept, this is how we are going to start having a conversation on usability, on how the visuals are going to be put together. But also agreeing with Ida, because I work a lot with the UX team on the solutions we build. So we try to do this as much as we can in advance before writing any line of code, is to say, well, this is just a sketch, this is just an idea, tell us how do you feel about it, and then you can have some better clues of how you're going to build your solution.
Great. Cool. And that was all kind of really leaning a little bit towards this kind of this last topic that was one of the really high confidence answers. And what's interesting here is if you look at the difference here, the growth companies are really like 3 times more likely to be doing that, some sort of light prototyping, not fully building, but before they actually commit to investing dollars in development, they're doing some prototyping to help with that validation along the way. But they're validating that problem. They're placing a greater priority on validating the problem and the solution in general. And the prototyping is a tool to validate the direction. So I thought those were some really key practices. And I know I've been in conversations frequently where the thought of prototyping has been seen as, well, that's going to take time away from the process, and we need to hurry up and get a solution out the door. But the ones that are growing are leaning on that much more frequently and heavily than those who are not growing. So these aren't necessarily causal relationships, they're correlative relationships, but I think they're important to point out and understand. So with that said, it's about 8:34 right now. And what I want to do is I want to shift gears a little bit, and I want to break us up into some smaller groups to discuss this concept and this topic. And what I did is I posed a question really focused on the problems that we've talked about a little bit. And I think there was a lot of interest in that. But I'm interested in folks breaking into smaller groups and sharing with each other some best practices and some ideas about how you currently go about validating problems and solutions for your customers. What are some techniques that you use for validating, or how would you like to? What are some ideas that you have? Even if it's not a practice that you've used, what's a thought that you've had or an idea that you have for a creative way, especially in the time of COVID where we've got a lot more remote work going on? How can you go about validating those problems and the solutions, sometimes with customers, sometimes without? Try not to constrain yourself. And if you're looking for that notes document, what I'd really like everyone to do is I'd like everyone to kind of record some of their top answers in their discussion in the notes document. You go to productcoffee.com/resources and click on the notes document down here at the bottom, and that'll take you to a Google Doc where everybody can put their ideas in. Just make a bullet list. And if you want to talk about a different question, that's fine too. Just let us know what you talked about in your group. So I'm going to break us all off. I'm going to stop sharing right now, and I'm going to break us all off into small groups and let us go discuss. Right now it's 8:36 a.m. I'm going to bring us back into the main conference at 8:50, and we'll do a little playback with each other. And so while you're discussing, elect someone from your group to be kind of the spokesperson for your group and talk about one of your key findings and thoughts with the rest of the folks here. So we have currently, we've got 18 people in here right now. So I'm going to break us into 19 people in here right now. I'm going to break us into 4 breakout rooms. That'll put 4 to 5 people in a breakout group to discuss your ideas together. So get to know each other really quickly, but spend some time talking about, go ahead. Somebody asking a question? Okay, spend some time talking about this question about how can we validate both problems and solutions. What are some great techniques and ideas for doing so? So it takes a few seconds for everybody to move out to the rooms. So just hang in there and you'll be asked to join a breakout room. I think we just about got everybody.
Hey, Jason, we need more time.
We need more time. Hey, that's what we have the LinkedIn group for. So we can bring it on. And I will keep the session open for a few minutes after the top of the hour for anyone who wants to continue the discussion. But sounds like you had a good one going there.
Yeah.
Excellent. Glad to see it. And I see, I was looking back in the chat. It looks like I was showing on my screen earlier, I was just showing the web page, the productcoffee.com/resources page, as I was talking about the different elements of it. So it looks like when I shared it, it didn't actually share the way I intended. So I hope everyone was able to find that. It looks like based on the number of note takers we were, but I will switch back over one more time just to make sure that everybody does see it. And this will change each week. I just thought it would be kind of a little bit of an easier way to share this each week. So there we go. That's got your productcoffee.com/resources with all the links that I was talking about earlier. If you weren't able to see that, that'll be up in its current form at least through the end of the day. Probably for a couple of days, and then I may change out. I'll probably take away the notes link, and that'll go to another location. But everything else should be pretty permanent. Maybe the Gartner link will go away as well. All right. So what I wanted to do next, though, is now that we're back together for the last few minutes that we have, what I wanted to do is kind of get some feedback from the folks in the breakout rooms about some kind of the key ideas that you had as you went away. So I'm going to just kind of go down the list. We had four rooms, and we'll start with breakout group 1. Who did you guys decide was going to speak?
It's Kurt. So let me go through real quick because we got a lot of stuff to go through in the remaining minutes. So group 1. We talked about, everybody knows they should validate. How much time and energy and other resources are there really to do that, but you got to do as much as you can, unless it's part of your corporate culture. We kind of heard that sometimes you just don't. So, take that point for what it's worth. We like prototyping too. COVID environment makes it hard to do some things for certain types of solutions and problems, but so you can be lucky or not so lucky these days with that one. Try to get good diversity across the population that you validate from. Avoid groupthink, things like that. Consider an NPS type of questioning strategy for your validation. Do you have a customer advisory board, and what levels in the organization are those people at? It can be anywhere. Just know where they are, and you'll tend to get different kinds of features from different levels. And then I added this one right after we punched out of the room. I've been to a few product camps, and I've heard more than once in product camp, don't go in and try and validate positive. Try and knock out your idea. It takes away your cognitive slant towards positiveness, because if you can't make a negative out of it, it's probably a better idea. So that's us. That's our team.
Thanks, Kurt. So let's see. Group 2. Don't see anything. Oh, yeah, there it is. So group 2. Did you guys have a spokesperson?
I'm sorry, Jason. Which group was?
Oh, sorry. That was actually you and Jeff and Mandy and Otto and Shalane.
Gotcha. I don't think we have a spokesperson, but auto. I mean, I'm happy to kind of pitch. So we talked about, how to validate ideas. And I think the main thing was do a light mock-up and get in front of the users, but then don't get married to it, right? Like that's not going to be the final solution that we deliver. So that was one. The second one, which was very interesting that Otto raised, was um, uh, he can actually observe users and kind of see the pain points in the process and the flow. Um, so that was great, like, actually getting to look over the shoulder of a user. That's the ultimate nirvana, right? So and in product validation. So that was another thing.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hey, Jason.
Yes.
And this, I just want to throw something out, and I brought up in the thing, and I just want to get your comments, and maybe it's a topic for a different session. Is I think we're talking a lot about validation, which that's how I'm defining it in my head, versus prioritization. To me, they're completely separate things, or two different exercises. And one of the reasons why I joined this call was sometimes I struggle with arguing, the actual prioritization methodology. For example, on a prior call you introduced, or on the prior call when I met you prior, a weighted scoring model. So those type of techniques that help you actually prioritize things of what you're actually going to work on. So I know these, to me, there's two separate things, but maybe that's something that we can discuss on a different.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the thing I wanted to cover today was really kind of some of the findings about differences in how growth, product managers at growth organizations versus non-growth organizations approach both investment priorities, as well as kind of some of the important things that they weighed in considering how to go forward with development. You're referring to the 60-second business case session that I mentioned earlier, and I was actually thinking about doing a recast of that on one of these calls in the future. So I will throw that up there and see what kind of interest there is in that. I'm glad to do it. And we can have that as a deeper discussion topic with other prioritization methodologies as well. So it sounds like you're specifically would be interested in some content around different prioritization methodologies and approaches. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. It's always an argument in the debate, and I think it should be more factual than it is.
Absolutely. That's a great idea. Glad to do that. Thanks for the input. Let's switch over to breakout room 3, which was Anthony, Diane, Eric, Michael, and Steve.
Not sure if we had a specific spokesperson. Would you guys in group 3 mind if I spoke?
Not at all.
Go ahead.
Diane, Dan, you want to take it?
No, go ahead, Steve.
Sure. Okay. Really what we talked was some of the difficulties you run into between MVP versus light prototyping. Whereas with light prototyping, you have to be concerned with obviously listening and being prepared. And you still do the same things as you would in an MVP, only it's more deliberate and it takes into consideration the iterative roadmaps that we all deal with. And it usually takes into consideration the fact that you have an ongoing business versus MVP, where it's a new project or it's a brand new company in some cases, and you're really running down the path fast. But I think it was Eric that pointed out it's the same thing, right? We have to be prepared to know when it's time to pivot. And I think also, Anthony, you brought up the fact that we have to be able to walk away from those things that don't work. That there's even if you're building a new project or you're building a small feature, there's this habit we have of wanting to continue it once you spent 2 weeks or 3 months building something. Both the product manager and the development team and the UI UX team typically want to hold on to it because we feel like we did so much hard work on it. We have to be able to give that up, go to what's right. So good conversation, I think, from all folks on our team.
I got to remember the concept of sunk costs.
Right.
You've already spent the money, you can still leave it behind.
Also, I think there was another point on we put it into into the document, keeping that eye on the strategic goal out there, and that that'll help steer us better.
Cool. All right, thank you. And then I'm going to switch over to group 4, which was Dwayne. I hope I'm saying this right. Soumya and Tiago.
Yes, and Ada was there as well. I know she had to drop off, but yeah, just so we talked about a lot of things, a lot of great ideas on prioritization and solution validation. Design thinking workshops is something that I think we try to leverage when possible. So And this fits in with the other note we had about always focus on multiple solutions. So design thinking workshops allows us to have a challenge, bring in diverse perspectives, right? A lot of diverse different groups of people from throughout the company, and even customers, if they're available, can participate. And so everybody's focused on a challenge, and you diverge, right? Like, what are all the various solutions to solve this problem, right? Because there's always more, and sometimes they're not specifically technology related, right? Sometimes as a very technical product manager, we may tend to say it's always technology, right? If we build the best site, we build the best website, or some awesome technology process that'll solve the problem, when it just might be, you know what, the communication is unclear to the customer at that particular point in time, or there is no communication. Thus, they are confused and don't move forward in the process. So having a design thinking workshop, bringing people together, can help flush some of that stuff out, and it may be more than a technology solution. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. Ongoing research, right? Researching what our customers want and pain points. So we spent some time talking about that. And it's not enough to just ask what they want or what the problem is, right? If you're a customer, you have to sometimes, if you can, pair that with actual data. So what are they doing, right? When they interact with your company, and again, it doesn't have to be on a website or an application. It could be when they're calling the CSR. What are some of the questions and what are they doing? Because you may find a gap. A customer may think this is the pain point, but really it's something else. So being able to continue to research and survey them along the way. And we talked about when you survey, how do you get them to go into a survey, right? Especially if it's in a separate system, but we need to make it easy. So maybe at the end of each of these micro processes, right? They make a payment in your system. Maybe there's a quick, hey, tell us how that went, right? Out of 5 stars or out of 10 or whatever, something really quick and easy. And if they want to provide more information, and they typically do if they had a bad experience, then you're getting that in the moment, in the context, versus sometimes a follow-up survey. So you don't want to overdo it. There is a balance, but we talked about that. And so working in this remote environment, what are some of the tools that we're using to work remotely we find effective? Mural came up. I think it's been mentioned several times before, previous talks, but that's becoming a tool people have probably thought about and said, yeah, we'll get to it. Now it's like, okay, it's necessary, or something similar. Not to go into all the details there, but it's a very collaborative tool, allows sketching and things like that, along with Zoom. And then, of course, sketching out ideas and testing those. Remote testing tools like usertesting.com is another one that we can leverage remotely, as well as, customer and user interviews. So.
Great. Yeah, cool. Well, we we're at 9:02, and I see a lot of people have had to already drop. Thank you so much, Dwayne. Thank you everyone for participating. What I'll do is I will make these notes available in the LinkedIn group, and I would encourage people to keep fleshing these out and adding to it, and we'll have some, and add to discussion in the LinkedIn group as well. I know Tiago said, hey, we're not done. Let's keep going. And I'll keep the bridge open for a few more minutes as well. Bridge, I haven't used that word since I was at AT&T. I'll keep the call open for a few more minutes. I have to run to another meeting, but I don't have to leave until about 10 after 9. So if anyone wants to stick around and follow up on conversation for a few more minutes, we'll keep it open and going for a little bit longer. So thanks everybody for coming, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, Jason. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Jason.
Thanks a lot.
All right.
Got a few of us still left on the line here.
Got a few hangers on. Yeah, excellent. It was a good group today. Thanks for coming. Thanks Stephen Otto.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
So scale of 1 to 10, how was this session for you?
I liked it that we got into some meat, talking about, because a lot of us are in different areas. Some are in established larger companies that have technology in them. Some of us are part of larger technology companies. Some of us are in smaller technology companies. And we even had a gentleman that joined from Detroit, who I guess has a connection to Atlanta as well too. Yep. He actually has an engineering background moving into products. So I thought we had kind of a cool mix of people, and people that work on different things. And to me, I get helped when I hear about someone from State Farm or other big companies, because I really need to learn some of their techniques, even if it's B2C.
Yeah.
It helps me in my smaller B2B activities. And sometimes I have another one, Blink Sky's it's B2B and B2C at the same time.
Yep.
And so I think hearing about these things are really helpful to me. And I thought we got into some meat today.
Yeah. Yeah, we really did. I was really pleased. So thank you. How about you, Otto?
No, I actually thought it was really good as well. I like sort of starting with the presentation and the information that you gave. I feel like that's something that sort of I can obviously take and incorporate into how I'm managing my team here at Delta and managing our products. I was able to make, some of the people here, Mike, when he and I actually have a couple connections and we didn't even know it. And so he and I are going to get together and chat later on. So I think having the introduction before everything started, I thought was cool. And so I love that. So I'll definitely make it a point to sort of join before the 8 o'clock start, because that's sort of an unexpected gift that you give there. And then the breakout sessions I thought was really good too. So I thought it was a really good balance of the material, creating some opportunities for connection, and it was really relevant material too. So this was awesome.
Excellent. I appreciate that. I'd appreciate both of you, sharing some of those comments out with your LinkedIn network and driving people to join this. The more people, and with your product management peers, the more people we get, it'll raise the value continually as well. Now, with that being said, I appreciate the great feedback. What are some things that you'd like to see, some suggestions that you could make that would make it even more valuable or would attract more people?
Obviously we know that we'll be getting back together for, the events and live things soon. I don't know when, but probably soon. Hope it's soon.
Yeah, right.
But I like the idea that product coffee is leading up to product camp. If we can sort of feel that these discussions we're having will then make, when we all get together, whether it's at General Assembly or wherever it happens to be, that all of a sudden we're building up this crescendo.
Yeah.
Plus now I've met, I've met Otto, I've met the guys that were in my breakout room. I want to be able to come in and not say, hey, I met you last year. What is it you do? I'd love to be able to know that I can say, Otto, how's that product you're working on at Delta? And know that when I walk in at the yearly conclusion, that it's something that almost felt like it led up to it.
Nice.
And so anyway, that's something I think if you could keep that in mind, Jason, that this is sort of and plus I'm a soon to be 59-year-old who feels like he's a 25-year-old learning about new stuff again.
Yeah.
And so it's fun. I really, and plus I'm a social creature, right? It's hard to be sitting in my house all the time when I'm such a social creature.
Absolutely.
And so I really think that by seeing each other, talking, then when we get together, it's going to be, I'll not only have learned more, be prepared more, I'll know people at different companies and say, hey man, what do you guys know about mobile? What do you guys know about what's latest in this, that, or the other thing? So anyway, crescendo.
Cool. Thank you. That's a good word. Thank you. I appreciate that. Otto.
I would say, and you may have been speaking about this when I joined, but so I joined just because, like I said, I had gone to the luncheon before, and I'm trying to get more involved in just the product management community. I didn't really have a understanding of what the topic would be today. And maybe it was in the communication, and I'm not good at reading emails. Sometimes I just missed it. But I think one of the things that I was pleasantly surprised once I got here was an incredible use of my time. But I think knowing what the topic was going to be, or what we would be discussing, I think would be good for me. Like I said, it may have been in there and I just missed it.
Okay. How'd you find out about it today? The event today?
I think I've been on the emails for a while, right? So okay. I remember I started getting emails at some point about Product Camp. I had gone to some of the lunches that they used to have around the city, a couple of years ago, and I just have always been in the emails.
Yep. Okay.
And so I just decided to come in today.
Okay. That's good feedback as well. Making that more prominent and clear what the topic is going to be. Cool. All right. Excellent. Thank you. All right. Well, I really appreciate you guys going and all your feedback.
Yeah,
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hey, I appreciate you. I'm going to find the LinkedIn and the resource page and all of that. So we'll be in touch.
Excellent. Great. Thanks a lot, guys.
Have a great day.
Have a great week. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.